let's chat all things ADHD and small business. So October is ADHD Awareness Month, and I thought it'd be a really good idea to do a Q&A all about how my ADHD affects me when running my small business. Now, as I'm filming this, it is actually the 31st of October. So in true ADHD style, I am filming this on the last day of ADHD Awareness Month, and this is going to be going out in November now. But I think that just shows one of the things that ADHD does to you is timekeeping is really hard, and I have so many good intentions, but it just doesn't happen when I want them to. In fact, I'm even currently sat on my sofa bed, pulled out as a bed right now because I had someone stay this week. I haven't had time to put it away. The room is a mess. It's chaos in here. I was planning to tidy up for this video, but I was like, you know what? This is reality, and not that you can really see anything anyway, but I think the setup that I have right now for this video is just very fitting, and I figured, why not? Also, it was just another reason for me to put it off if I started tidying this room. And now we're nearly in November, we are losing light, so I needed to get this done quick. So I asked people to share some questions over on Instagram in relation to ADHD and also running my business with ADHD. So I do have some of them here. Before we dive into those questions, I just wanted to give you a little bit of background in case you don't know my story or have no idea who I am. So my name's Millie, and I run a business called Blink Lettering, which is a calligraphy business. I teach calligraphy, I demonstrate, I am a content creator, I do all sorts of things. I'm also a graphic designer, which kind of I feel like is important to let you know now in terms of what I'm like as an ADHD business owner. So I am officially diagnosed with ADHD. I got diagnosed last year in November. I was very fortunate in my area that the wait period was only 6 months. If you are outside of the UK or you have no idea about any of this, the wait times in the UK for ADHD diagnosis is ridiculous. I've heard some places have 11-year wait lists, which is just wild. I don't understand how it's that long. So I am very lucky that I was able to get a diagnosis very quickly on the NHS, which was free. So it's actually nearly a year since I got diagnosed. And for the past year, I've been struggling, to be honest. It was a struggle before I got diagnosed, but then I've been processing that diagnosis. And on top of that, I've had a few issues with the local mental health team down here, which has been such a shame, particularly around getting ADHD meds, which I know there is a huge shortage in the UK and I think worldwide as well. But just how it's been handled hasn't been the best, to be honest. But I am now on ADHD medication. I honestly don't know if it's helping me that much, and I think I will dive into that more in some of the questions later on. I am going through something called titration, which basically is a period of time to help me figure out what meds work for me. So that's a little bit of background about me and my ADHD journey. So I had a mix of questions. Some were kind of based around like what ADHD does for me, like what does it mean? And then others were more like questions about tips for running your business with ADHD. So I'm going to split those into two different sections. So the first section, we're going to explore what ADHD is, how it's affecting me, and all of that stuff. And then we'll move on to the questions that is kind of like sharing my tips and advice if you feel like you have ADHD or you do have it, and how to run your business. Just a spoiler alert, I am not a pro and I am still figuring out a lot myself, but hopefully I can share some things that help. So let's dive right into the questions. So I feel like the first question is really important, and it is just simply, what is ADHD? So ADHD stands for Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder, which honestly is a bit of a weird name for it. It's not that I have a lack of attention, I'm just not very good at channeling it all in one place without getting distracted. So it can affect people in many different ways. There are so many different ways that it affects people. And I think that On Instagram and TikTok, there are a lot of videos that are all quirky, like, oh, do you do this? Do you do that? You might have ADHD. And they're all very like quirky and cutesy. But honestly, ADHD is a disability. And what it does is really bad. Like, this the easiest way to say it. Like, it's not cool, it's not fun. I honestly kind of wish that I didn't have it, but here we are, and I'm just learning to live with it. So in terms of how it affects me personally, one of the things that I have really struggled with all my life is anger. It tends to kind of build up internally rather than me like expressing it too much. But sometimes it gets so much that I can't control it. And that's actually the reason why I looked to get diagnosed in the first place, because I was just a bit concerned about how I was feeling. And after a lot of research looking at like female hormones and stuff, I discovered it linked with ADHD. The other thing I really struggle with is getting like, especially either small tasks or boring tasks done. And it's not that I'm like being lazy or putting it off. I will literally sit at my desk and I just physically can't do it. Like, the only way to describe it is there's an invisible force stopping me, and like it's just so frustrating. And there have been times I've just sat there for like an hour and cried because I just can't do it. And it might be something that only takes me 5 minutes. Like right now I have a few £1,000s worth of invoices that I need to send out, which is wild because I need that money to pay for my mortgage. For me, ADHD shows itself in really struggling with work and getting stuff done. Although, and I'll touch on this later, deadlines really help me. If I have a deadline, I am very good at getting it done. I'm also just chaotically messy. Like, if you followed me for a while, you realise that this room is always a state. I'm always talking about it being a state, or I'm tidying it. And I lose stuff a lot. One of the things I've lost at the moment is my keys. I have no idea where they are. I spent ages looking for them earlier, and I found my purse, which I lost a few days ago. So yeah, it's really, really frustrating, to be honest. So next question here, which I've kind of touched on, I guess, is what's a common misconception about having ADHD? I think there's quite a lot of misconceptions out there. There's this talk of it being a superpower, and honestly, it's not a superpower. Yes, I sometimes go into like huge hyperfocus and I can get work done, but at the same time, I'm forgetting to eat, I'm forgetting to sleep, I'm forgetting to even go to the toilet. So I don't think that's much of a superpower because it's not healthy, it's not good for me. Another misconception is that people are creative because of their ADHD. And that's just simply, well, I'm not going to say it's simply not true. I'm not a neuroscientist. I don't exactly know. But I truly believe that people are just creative because they're creative. But it happens to be that people with ADHD tend to lean towards creative subjects because it works for them. It gives them a dopamine hit. Maybe a standard boring 9 to 5 job just doesn't work for their brain. So there are a lot of people with ADHD who are in creative areas or small businesses because they're trying to build a life that works for them in a very neurotypical world. I don't want to think that my creativity is because of my ADHD. I feel like I'm creative because I love it, I'm good at it, and I work really hard as well. Okay, so what do you find hardest? I have kind of touched on this already. It is definitely the admin tasks in my business. So sending invoices, chasing invoices, emails, especially if I've like not caught up in a day and then they start building up and building up. I think I've got like 83 unread emails right now. I know a lot of them are probably junk, but just getting myself around to doing stuff like that is really hard. I also think the biggest thing that has been the hardest, and the thing that I'm trying to figure out, is burnout. I go through a cycle of burnout on quite a regular basis, taking on too much work, too many things, and then just getting completely overwhelmed and not being able to cope. And that continuous cycle is just so hard to break. Like I don't know how to break it. I was last in that state of burnout back in January this year. And honestly, I think I'm going back into that quite soon. I'm trying to get better at looking after myself, but it's hard. It's really hard. What are some of the things you find tricky? So I think that kind of links in to the other question with what you find hardest, but it is kind of keeping on top of all of those little tasks. I also, part of the reason I got a diagnosis is going from being employed in a company where I was given like my schedule for each day to suddenly being at home with my own deadlines and my own work. And I just really struggled to get projects started or know where to even start and like manage that side of things. There's been a lot of projects that I've really wanted to do and I just haven't started them, to be honest. It's really frustrating that I haven't, and I know that I could do it so well, but it's just that first starting point. And I don't know how to describe it apart from like this invisible force that is just holding me back. So here we have, how does ADHD help your business and what challenges does your ADHD pose for your business? I do really like this because although I've said that ADHD is not a superpower, like it's not something to enjoy having, it is a disability and it is really hard. I will admit that there are some things that ADHD has helped with in my business. Whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, I don't know, but I don't think I'd be where I am right now if it wasn't for my ADHD. So I think the first thing, which is unhealthy, but the first thing is just saying yes to everything and not really worrying or thinking about it until later. So kind of being quite risk averse. I think some really good examples of that is I became a published author this year. So I just said yes to a publisher about writing a book. I didn't know how to write a book. I absolutely hated writing at school and university. Like that just was not for me. But I said yes and figured it out later. I've also done things like being on live TV. I've done a lot of quite scary things with my business because I've just said yes and worried about it later. So I guess that is a benefit for my ADHD, is that I'm willing to take risks. I'm willing to give things a go. That also ties into kind of like the willing to give it a go, also like just wanting to try everything. I've done a lot of different things in my business, like selling products on Etsy, weddings, chalkboards, windows, teaching online, in person. I've done it all with my business, and I think again my ADHD kind of helped with that, and it helped me figure out what I did find interesting. On the flip side of that, it's also a hindrance because what happens in my business is I focus on an area and I love it and I get really into it, and then after a few months I get bored and then I switch to the next thing, which I think as a small business in terms of growth isn't great because I'm not becoming like a specialist in one area. I'm just kind of doing a bit of everything. I'm also very good when it comes to deadlines. Like I can be very, very unreliable in terms of just getting stuff done in general. But if there is a deadline, I will get that done. Again, probably not in the most healthiest of ways. It may be staying up all night. It may be not eating, not looking after myself in general, but I will do it. Like, I will get that done. A great example again is my book. I basically did most of it in the last 2 weeks over Christmas and New Year. So yeah, there are a few things that ADHD does help me with my business, but I think they're not necessarily the healthiest of things. However, it has really helped my business grow. In terms of challenges that my ADHD possesses, I have missed meetings. Thankfully, that's never caused me to lose a client, but that dread and overwhelm takes over when something like that happens, and then in turn, it makes it very hard for me to get anything else done. I think with the challenges as a whole, they kind of split into short-term everyday and then like longer term ones. So like the short-term everyday ones are just things like getting really easily distracted. I sit in a really weird position in my chair, which is honestly really uncomfortable but really comfortable at the same time. So like that's not very good for my posture. Not anymore, but I used to just be like hungry all the time and always going to the fridge, again part of the whole distraction thing. My ADHD meds have helped with that now, and I'm no longer constantly wanting to snack, so that's kind of a good thing. I am still struggling with getting just general admin tasks done each day, getting overwhelmed with those things. Yeah, that's kind of a bit of a struggle. And then I think the long term, which I've already mentioned, is a lot of goals that I've wanted to achieve, I haven't. And I think on the outside to everyone else, it looks like I'm doing a lot, but honestly, internally, it feels like I'm not. I don't feel like I'm doing enough ever. And I don't know how to shake that, to be honest. So the next question is, how does ADHD impact your creativity and the way you manage lots of projects? I feel like I'm a creative person outside of my ADHD, but what ADHD has done for me is just a willingness to try new things. That's how I got into calligraphy. I was doing bookbinding and I loved it, but I was also like, let's try something new. And that was calligraphy. And honestly, I am shocked that I'm still doing calligraphy 8 years on. I've had a lot of hobbies in my time, a lot of like physical hobbies. I have always been kind of creative, but again, always chopping and changing what I was doing. So the fact that I'm actually doing something for such a long time is quite surprising. I think it's because I turned it into a business, so it was kind of like I had to do it. Like there was no choice. I honestly don't really do much calligraphy for like fun and my own time anymore, which is a bit of a shame. But again, outside of my calligraphy, I think it really helped me be a graphic designer because I was willing to just try different things. I can do brand design, print design, digital. I'm just willing to give everything a go, and I really like to understand how things work too, and also share that knowledge. I've forgotten what the question was. Oh yeah, and the way you manage lots of projects. So actually that brings us really nicely into the next part of the video. So hopefully I've kind of explained a little bit about what ADHD does for me. Honestly, I'm a little bit scatty at the moment and I don't really know what I've just said. So that's kind of classic. I've gone off on a tangent. Have I covered all bases? I don't know. If you have any other ADHD questions at all, then you can pop them in the comments below and I will get back to you. But hopefully I've kind of explained it. So let's move on to what I do in my business to help me with my ADHD. So we had from that last question, how does ADHD impact the way I manage lots of projects? So I have always been quite chaotic with planning. I love the idea of a cute notebook or a cute diary. I've had loads and probably filled in like a few pages and then got bored. And I've slowly started to figure out what works for me. And honestly, the thing that I use now, and I have been for a couple of years, is something called Notion. It's a piece of software which I absolutely love. It's quite a daunting piece of software because it's basically just a database system and you can like build stuff into it however you want. However, it really taps into my ADHD mind because if I start getting bored of a planning process, I can just like rearrange it all and redo how I plan, and it just makes it exciting for me again. So Notion has been really working for me quite well, and in there I have a lot of different ways that I manage different tasks and projects. So for example, I do quite a lot of content for Pentel and they're actually linked to that Notion page. So we have a content planner there. So I can see visually when things are due. Actually having stuff in a calendar format is really helpful for me. I also use it to manage my freelance graphic design work. So that's things like tracking how long projects take and how much I'm charging clients. So when it comes to invoicing, I can see whether a project is profitable or not, which is super helpful. I then also have a work dashboard, which is where I can just like brain dump all of my to-dos. Let me know if you'd like a whole video on how I'm using Notion, by the way, because it's taken me a while to get used to it, but I absolutely love it now. A couple of other things I'm getting in place is a social content calendar on there, and also Notion now have their own calendar app, which I love because, like I said, I work better seeing like things in calendar format rather than just a long to-do list. And being able to just move stuff around really easily helps. So I know that if I have had a bad afternoon, if I'm feeling a bit like fatigued, my brain isn't working, I can just move stuff as long as there's not a deadline. Okay, so next question. So I have here, how do you cope with days where lots of things are going wrong? I feel like there's two different answers for this, because there's days where things are going wrong, like I'm actually making mistakes, I'm screwing up, and there's days where I'm just not functioning in my brain, and therefore it feels like everything is wrong, but it's probably not going wrong. So the days where things are actually going wrong or they're chaos, it's generally when I'm quite stressed, I've got a tight deadline, I'm just throwing stuff all over the place. Like right now there is calligraphy ink all over my carpet because I shook a bottle and it didn't have the lid on properly. And I have days like that quite a lot where I'm just going too fast for my own good and it's quite overwhelming. In terms of how I cope with that, honestly, in a very unhealthy way, I just keep going, because generally those days are the days where I actually really need to get stuff done, so I don't have the time. But more recently, I guess I've been kinder to myself, so getting less frustrated if I do throw ink all over the floor. I'm a bit more like, oh, here we go again, rather than like getting annoyed with myself. So I think just having that kind of self-awareness has really helped me, like realizing that sometimes I do stuff or I act in a certain way and I really can't help it, and there's no point in beating myself up about it. So if that is happening, I do just try to like look after myself a bit better. It's quite common that I've done mistakes in the past with work, which again, like the dread and overwhelm is real. I haven't had many days like that recently, and maybe that's a sign that my ADHD medication is doing something for me. Who knows? Oh, and then I said there are two parts to that question. So the days where nothing is going wrong, but it feels like those days are going wrong, honestly, that's normally to do with my cycle. So if it's towards the beginning of my period, I just want to cry all day, to be honest, and it feels like everything is wrong. Like, not that I'm doing wrong things, but everything in my life is wrong. Like, I just don't feel happy, and that's really hard. I've gotten better with just giving myself those days to just feel a bit more relaxed. Like if I need to go have a bath or I need to go read a book to distract my mind, then I will go do that. And that is a huge blessing of being self-employed and running my own business, is that if I need to go have a bath at 3 o'clock in the afternoon on a Monday, I can. So although I've had a lot of struggle since going self-employed in terms of organisation, there has been a lot of good things about it as well. Like just being able to work with my brain a bit better. I know that I function much better in the morning. So if I do have a lot of work, I tend to start at like 7 o'clock in the morning and get all of those bits done. So I can't even remember what the bloody question was again. Oh yeah, so we were just talking about how things go wrong. Since getting diagnosed and really understanding what ADHD is and how it affects me, I've just been a bit more kind and compassionate to myself, which honestly is a huge learning curve. I did start going to therapy a few months ago, and that has been really helpful as well. But I just kind of deal with it. I'm quite good in a crisis, but if I knock a glass over or something tiny like that, I would probably cry. So, you know. Okay, so next question. Do you recommend any apps/techniques that have helped with time procrastination? I have tried them all, and well, not all of them, but I've tried a lot, and there are a lot that have been really helpful to me, and then I have got bored. So I've done the Pomodoro method, where you work for 20 minutes, I think, have 5 minutes break, keep doing that, and then you have a longer break after the third or fourth cycle. I actually have some, hang on, I'll get them. I have some of these timer-dye. I have not used these in ages. I can't remember the last time I used them. They sit on my desk all the time and I just forget about them. That is helpful if I've got like quite a big chunky task and it stops me from going into like hyper focus mode. Or these are also really good just to give myself like a limit, like I really need to tidy my room. Let's see how much I can get done in 15 minutes. So it's not this room needs to be spotless, it's just let's see how much I can get done. And that's really helpful. There is also an app called Forest, I think it is. And that is where, again, it works in the same way. So I don't know how well you can see that, but you have like a timer and then you press plant and then it grows a tree in that timer. And if you use your phone while the tree is growing, it dies, which is very sad. But if you leave it until the end, then it grows a tree and you can build a whole forest. And I think my forest looks a little bit sad. I mean, that's from today. You can see a little dead tree there. So that is, again, an app that I have found helpful. I'll use it religiously for like days, weeks, and then I just one day forget about it. For me, I think variety is quite important. I've realised for me, I need a schedule. Like I need a clear idea of what I'm doing throughout the day so I don't procrastinate. And having that schedule for like a whole week planned out is really good as well, rather than planning it out each day. So either Sunday evening or Monday morning, I will plan out the week. There might be stuff in the calendar already from like previous projects I knew when they were needing to be done. And that does really help me keep on track, but it doesn't stop like the kind of procrastination paralysis that I still get. But like I said, but I think this goes back to kind of looking after myself and being more self-aware. If there are days where it's just not working for me and the work I have in my schedule can move, I will move it. It's very weird to get out of like the 9 to 5 Monday to Friday mindset when you've done that for like a lot of your life. But I've really started to realise this year as a self-employed person, I can work whenever I want. So I know that I work better in the mornings. I tend to flag about 3-4 o'clock, to be honest. And that's probably why my brain is not working right now, because it's 4 o'clock and yeah, it's gone. But yeah, I've just started to kind of embrace that. So rather than sitting at my desk and getting upset that I can't start a task, I will be like, you know what, I'm going to take Raven for a walk, or if it's gloriously sunny, I'm going to go to the beach, or I'm going to have a bath, or I'm going to read, or I'm going to go downstairs and just clean the kitchen for a bit. And just giving myself that time to do something else, whether it's more practical or relaxing, has been so good for me. I also had another point. Oh yes, so in terms of like helping me get all of those boring tasks done, the thing that I have found that has helped me the most is body doubling. Body doubling is where you have someone in the room with you and like they don't force you to do it, but like they're there to help guide you. I do co-working with another self-employed friend quite a lot. Either we go to her house, she comes here, or we go to a coffee shop. And that is so helpful for me because I feel like I have to be like, I'll get my work done. Especially if I'm out of the house, I can't get distracted by other things. So body doubling, I'd say, has been a much more powerful tool for me than any kind of app or anything out there. Even like going to a coffee shop by myself, like it doesn't have to be with a friend, but even going to a coffee shop by myself hugely helps because there's like other people there and I'm like, oh, I should look like I'm working. So that's something that's really been helpful. So the next thing is, how do you handle it when a day starts wrong and the frustration and overwhelm is intense, you literally can't move on? I suffer quite badly from anxiety. It is one of my ADHD symptoms, but I was also diagnosed with generalized anxiety, and I will have days where I just feel so horribly anxious, and it may be about something specific. If it is, then all I can think of is that. Sometimes there isn't a reason, and it just takes over, and it's so hard. If I have work that needs to be done, I try and do the work that requires the least brain power. So whether that's like graphic design amends for clients or filming content for Instagram, because then I can just sit there and be creative. But those days are really hard. I have started to kind of embrace them, in the sense that if it's just a day that's not working for me, it's just a day that's not working for me, and there's always the next day to crack on with those bits. I find that if I've had a day or two where I have been like that, then when I get out of that funk, I am actually super productive and I do get a lot done, and I probably get like 2-3 days worth of work done in one day. I kind of almost can rely on myself and my hyper focus that I can give myself that break. For me, one of the things that helps calm my mind the most is getting out for a walk with the dog or reading. Those are two things that just really help me. Exercise is great for me as well, but I just don't get around to doing it as much as I should. So I think I've covered most of the questions there. There are a lot of like similar type questions. I'm also honestly kind of getting slight brain fatigue like talking this much. What I'm going to do is share some really helpful resources in the description below. There's some really brilliant podcasts out there like ADHD Adults UK and ADHD as Females. And whether you have ADHD, you think you have ADHD, or you don't have ADHD, I think they're really valuable resources to go look at, to listen to read, just to get an understanding of what ADHD is. So I feel like at the moment it's getting a lot of common misconceptions about what it is, what it means, is it cool? And I don't think all of these TikToks and Instagram reels are helping that. Like, it's making it look quirky or cool or fun, and it's honestly not. And I don't know whether I've communicated that very well in this video or not, but it can affect you in so many different ways. And every single person is different. So I really recommend checking out some of the links that I've shared in the description below. And if you have any questions at all about anything I've said or anything I haven't said that you'd like to know more about, then please do let me know in the comments below. I feel like this video is a bit chaotic and rushed, but hopefully it got the message across. Like I said, I'm literally filming this on the last day of ADHD Awareness Month. So it is what it is. Thank you so much for watching. If you did get to the end of my intense rambling, then please leave a little unicorn emoji below. Whether you're ADHD or not ADHD, I just really appreciate you watching this, because it's something that I'm still navigating talking about, especially when it links to my business. So thank you so much, and I'll catch you guys soon. Bye.